Okay, so I'm not going to waste any time. So we're going to have our guest of honor tonight come give the keynote speaker. Ladies and gentlemen,
Zawa, 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 zawa. Patapule, patapule, patapule. Zawa, zawa, zawa. Siola, siola lepere. Siola, siola lepere.
Thank you so much for coming out. I think the first thing I want to acknowledge for it, we are all here, and it's in these times to come out is to risk your life. Yes. So I do not take it for granted that you're all here. Because I really appreciate you all coming out from far, from close, from near, and being with us today, and for being the gift that you all are. Number two, I want to appreciate all the artists that performed today. They were beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you to, it was amazing. It is really an important day's work. All right, so I'm quite overwhelmed. I've spent this past couple of months, February, March, killer, like just being busy because of what TX has done. It's not every day that you get to be acknowledged and seen and be noticed. You do a lot of work or you do whatever you do in your life, and you never imagine that your friends, peers, fellow artists will see that. So first I'd like to thank TX, Theatre Dumeleng, the logistic staff, everyone, and the generous organizers of this gathering. I want to also acknowledge my fellow theatre makers from the Writers Lab. And most importantly, I want to acknowledge Antonio Lyons, who's in absentia, who's not here, who introduced me to X and TX. And I have become so attached, so Yeah, so it's at home. I've been at home like can for stay. It's not only for stay long, like can for stay. But it's been wonderful that I've been I really appreciate Antonio for having introduced me to everyone and this space.
Sure.
So thank you, TX and everybody for creating this space. What you have created is a moment for not only everyone to come together and experience theatre, something that we've all missed, but also it's a moment of pause and reflection. And as a playwright and a director and academic, I am also not alone. I come from a community of women. I come from people who have dedicated their time, and women like Ausintia Mohoro, Ausnabo Mashiani, Auswar Rasiani, Ausnatili Mulibati, Memutavi Chanele, Mama Toronjigila, Rosilio Makon, and many other women. These women who have pried open vaulted doors, laid foundations and carpets for me, for us to exist. So I want to acknowledge all of them and their work. I want to say that I'm accountable, not to myself, and that I'm not the only one, but I'm accountable to also a community of sisters, Bomama, our mothers who carry us, and those who I carry every day. And for them, I want to dedicate this poem and the speech that I'm going to do, this poem by Alice Walker from 1979, that she writes. These were women, them, my mother's generation, husky of voice, stout of step, with fists as well as hands, how they battered down doors and ironed starched white shirts, how they led armies, fields in booby-trapped ditches to discover books, desks, stages, a place for us, how they knew what we must now know without knowing a page of it themselves. So I want to take this moment to thank them and to say that we're gathered here in this moment, in this time, because we, the living, have to build our own table. For me, COVID came, or the moment of last year came it was horrible for all of us, but it was also a moment that said, everything, I don't care now. I don't care. I don't care about them. I don't need to be in a certain aesthetic. I don't need to look a certain way. The only thing that I need to be doing is being accountable to this community that I work with, which is Writers Lab, TX, and all the women that I carry. I don't need to be doing all the work that I was trying to do and prove for who I am. And so therefore, I titled my talk as We the Living and Building Our Own Table. So I think it's safe to say that when you spend this much of time thinking about something, and in my case, which is Black theatre, you think a lot about it. When it is good, you think about how much you love it, and today we saw it, how much we love it. When it is causing you trouble, you think about why you put yourself through the stress. When it's in trouble, you try to figure out how to save it, how to fix it, make it better. When you try to find the root of the problem, or what is it? And once you think you've identified it, you obsess over what you can say and how to make that difference. And for me, I'm using this imagery of the table that was taken from Stephen Bantu Biko as he writes about the metaphoric table that we must build. And I quote him, "We must remove him," which is the white man, "from our table. Strip the table of all the trappings put on it by him. Decorated in it, true African style, settle down and then ask later for him to join. On our terms, if you may like." So I believe this moment and what TX has offered us is an offering of expressions of this table. They even painted And what is this table that we dream of today? It is not a new table, but it is a table that Numiso Dada borrows this metaphor of illustrating this table at first when he quotes Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, where he called us to come to the permeable tree. And the wood of that tree is the wood that Biko calls to and creates this table, saying liberation will not be found from blacks joining the table of whites. We must create our own table. That life is our creation and everyday making and writing of ourselves into being. It is the poetry of making new worlds. And we know that in theater, we are those people who create new worlds. This is the work that we do. We dream up new worlds, we write, and some of us don't even write. The other week, Eddie was on our case for Alimoliman. So, but it is what we do. This is what we do. We do this because we create unforgettable memories. We are consistently, even in our uncertainty, we are always in creation. We surprise ourselves. We continue and we persist and we find joy in difficult situations. And this pandemic has been a disaster for theater. Of course it has. And potentially more damaging for the performing arts than any other industry. And yet in the long run, it is us. In the long run, we are the ones who repair the stages. We are the ones who will rebuild these tables. And we are the ones who will lead the long needed changes that will elevate our people who work on, under, and behind the stage.
Yeah.
So we see this crisis in the world, the occupation of the NAC offices. Throughout the entire world, there's that phrase that is happening in France right now with the occupation of theaters, where they are talking about arts workers. It is being used. It is a framework that art making is both a matter of liberty and labor. That we can see ourselves as frontline workers. Here, the arts is giving us a drawing and measurement for our table. Could we be the liberation and the workers of our own liberation? So theater is a space where we are creating worlds. And I want to use the host's quote where she talks about the academy, but I want to think of it as theater. And she recounts that theater gives us a space to analyze the world, to imagine a different one. You see, theater, and she would say academy, is not paradise. But in this stage, it is a place where paradise can be created. It is where limitations, with all its limitations, and we're remaining in this location, there's possibility. In this field of possibility, we have an opportunity to labor for freedom, to demand of ourselves and our comrades an openness of mind and heart, and allow us to face reality even as we collectively imagine ways to move beyond our boundaries. Remember that the radical things that are made are always made in those spaces of upheaval. We know that the lack of consciousness and is to refuse to accept the status quo, and that we can be those different people. So, in this moment, what is the weather? What is the weather for us, and how do we create? So remember when, who was that one? Noah. Noah, watch So what is the weather? Our weather is, and the weather is death. Our weather is disaster. Our climate and the total climate is anti-black. Our weather also, though, for us, and what TX is giving us, is possibility. That in the impossibilities that we are faced with as black people, we can work. We can dismantle what we have come to worship. I have worked and I've internalized my own white supremacy culture as it relates to this field. I have become a doctor in this field. And therefore I know that I have been trained in such a way that requires and makes me interpret my blackness in problematic ways. It has made me think of myself and monitor myself in ways that are not allowing me to be free or to be creative. But I want us, and I want to challenge us to go and embrace our collectiveness, our shared leadership models, and to let go, really let go of those ideas that aesthetic is about certain things. But that aesthetic is about the goal of being owned and embraced by community. That we can still meet an aesthetic that is determined and appropriate for our culture, our community, our people. There are so many other tables that we can build. We are all creating new tables, and I challenge us to continue creating new tables. To close off, the existence and the presence of TX Theatre and Kuwamba Women's Festival is our table. It is a function of freedom. It is a feast and a celebration of survival, that even through COVID, we survived. It is a bringing out of what we are meant to be here on earth. It is that we are proud, we are grateful for letting us to be part of this big, big, big table, this heaven on earth that all you make and create. We are privileged to be a part of you. And to lastly, quote somebody and say, when Toni Morrison writes about the future, our future is ripe. It is outrageously rich in its possibility. Yet unleashing the glory of that future will require a very difficult labor. And some may be so frightened of its birth that they will refuse to abandon their nostalgia of the womb. I want to challenge us. Our future is very bright. It is ripe and outrageously rich in its possibility. Yet unleashing that glory of the future will require all of us to work hard, to step into those spaces, even when we are frightened of that birth, and to refuse and abandon the nostalgia of the womb. So I'm confident to say, in knowing that the labor that we need to enter in is ongoing in here. And finally, the part that I wanted to share with you is we, the living. Tonight, we, the living, we gather to meditate with each other on life, on death, on the ones we know and the ones we've lost, while locking eyes over wine, laughter, coffee, bright lights, and tipped-lipped smiles, over empty pockets, lost jobs, wearing fitting and wonderful suits and clothes, paying our bills, not paying our bills. What does it mean for us to build and rebuild? We, the living, as we gather in our summer heat, or not so summer heat, in our waves of breath and song, what does it mean to be healthy, to have financial health, to revive our arts and working relations? We, the living, taking great looking photos, we, the living, who are tense and poised, shaken and breathing. Is it strange how life goes on? As we check our phones, have webinars, bake bread, make love, we, the living, are forced to reflect. How might we make other tables? How might we make room for others? What will we say of our era? And that is indeed how strange it is that life goes on. Thank you so much.
From your grave. Thank you so much. Be the living. Ooh, thank you so much, Doctor. And with that said, can we have all Itumeleng who are the TXDXA members, please come and honor this wonderful lady, Unyeza Ngabuya, sis. Sandela, Itumeleng, as well, you're going to also give us a speech about Kuwamba after you honor our doctor. And then, Zovala was bonile. Ungawari sbosh emuba, sisi nawe sisi. Siyagada nje la.